Chris, fix my hair. Let's go.
So sorry, Jason.
Okay. Hair and makeup done?
Yeah, beautiful.
Beautiful. Let's get into it. We all have authority figures in our lives. People who tell us what to do. People who exercise guidance over our lives. For most of you and for us, most of us, it's our parents or maybe grandparents or the people that raise us. It's our teachers at school. They have authority over us when we're at school. Sometimes it could be the coaches, the people that teach you and train you. And when you get older, it's going to be your boss. Your boss is going to be an authority figure in your life. Or if you get married, it'll be your wife. If you're a man, it'll be your wife who tells you what to do. Is that right?
No comment.
No comment. There you go. So we all have authority figures in our lives. And what you may not realize is actually the school bell is kind of an authority figure in your life. Because the school bell, when you think about it, the school bell is the thing that sort of orientates your life and your day around that sort of a thing. Like it determines what time you get up in the morning because you know that the morning bell is going to go. It tells you at different times throughout the day which classes and which periods you go to, when you go to recess, when you go to lunch. That is kind of an authority figure in your life without you even realizing it. But the question is, like, who has ultimate authority? Who has ultimate authority and who has the authority in each and every situation? Who has authority over every person on the planet, over everything? Who has ultimate authority? When you think about school, for instance, your head teacher has authority over that department that they're leading. Your head teacher is then answerable to a deputy principal or to a principal. That principal is then answerable to the Department of Education. That department is then answerable to the Minister of Education, who's then answerable to whoever the head of the government is, who is then answerable to the people who vote that government in. So we all have authority figures, and sometimes there's a ranking system in how those authority figures go. In your workplace, if you've got a part-time job, you might have like an assistant manager if you work at a place like McDonald's or Woolworths, who is then answerable to like a overall manager of the store, who's then answerable to like a area manager, who then might be answerable all the way up until the CEO of the company. And the CEO of the company is then answerable to people called shareholders, the ones that own the company. So there are different people who exercise authority at different times and in different ways. But the question is, again, who has ultimate authority? Who has authority over everybody? And sometimes when we think about this question of authority, we think about people who have authority in certain positions, but not in other positions. So for instance, your teachers at school have authority over you and they can say, you need to wear this uniform to school. But they don't have authority over you when you're at home. They can't say to you, you need to wear this when you're at home, for instance. The police have authority over us when we're on the streets, when we're driving. They can pull me over if I'm speeding and say, I have the authority to pull you over and to give you a fine. But they can't exercise authority in my own household when I want to watch something on TV. They can't say to you, you have to watch this on Netflix or you have to watch that on YouTube. So some people have authority, but they only have authority in certain situations and in certain environments. But we still have to ask the question, who has ultimate authority? Who exercises authority in each and every situation? Who has authority over every person's life? And the Bible makes it very clear that God, Jesus, is the one who has all authority over every single person on the planet. The Bible says that at the very name of Jesus, every knee, not just on earth, but in heaven, will bow to him. He has authority not just over people on earth, he has authority even over everything or everyone who is in heaven. Even the angels, Jesus has authority over everyone. This is a man in the Gospel of John where we're looking at a man who exercises supreme authority and who has not just authority over people on earth, but he has authority over everybody, even angels in heaven. It's quite a powerful story. But what is interesting is that when you think about this question of authority, authority is very closely connected to power. You can't have authority without exercising some level of power. And you can't have power without authority. How strange would it be, for instance, if your friend at school said to you, tomorrow we all have the day off. We all have a pupil-free day. We don't have to come to school. He doesn't have the authority to say that because he or she don't have the power to give everybody a pupil-free day at school. But for instance, you're going to take it a lot more seriously if your principal or somebody from the Department of Education or government says, tomorrow everybody has a day off school. Because that person has authority, but they also have the power to carry out and to exercise that authority. Jesus has authority, but he also has all power. When Jesus makes a statement, we can consider that statement to be true because he has the power to actually fulfill what he is saying. He has the power to do the very things that he's saying, to make true the things that he is saying. I want to read a story today where Jesus comes into contact with a group of people who want him to exercise his power. They want him to say, okay, Jesus, you're doing all of these incredible things. You're making all of these incredible statements, but we want to see that you actually have the power to fulfill the things that you're saying. And this question of authority and power was very important in Jesus' day because Jesus had a long-running dispute with the people that we know as religious teachers. He had a constant back and forth dialogue, almost like a Twitter exchange. You know, one of those Twitter or social media exchanges where two celebrities just go back and forth with each other. Jesus had one of those types of exchanges, obviously not on the internet because they didn't have the internet or social media. But Jesus had one of these long-running disputes with these people, with these religious teachers. They were saying to him, you're saying all of these things, you're making all of these dramatic claims. How do you have the power? How do you have the authority? And Jesus kept showing them how he had the power and how he had the authority through the way in which he kept on doing these miraculous things that we've looked at. So Jesus is in a situation where he's come back home. He's actually come back to the place where he is from originally. He's come back home and the people are hearing all of these incredible things that he's saying about himself, and they're saying, Jesus, we know you have authority, but we want to see your power in action. We want to see the way that you actually fulfill and live up to the great claims you're making about yourself. And we're going to read a story here today, and it's about Jesus coming into contact with an official whose son was actually sick, whose son, as far as we can gather, is dying. We don't know what he's got. We don't know whether it's an illness, what exactly it is, but he's very sick, and he comes to Jesus, and he says, Jesus, I need you to heal my son. Now, this official, we don't exactly know his job, but we know that he was an official who worked for the ruler of that area, a guy by the name of Herod. Herod was the ruler, like the king of that area. So he was a guy who exercised a lot of authority and a lot of power. But as much authority and as much power as this guy Herod exercised, and as much power and authority as he gave to this particular official, he did not have the power to heal the son who was sick. This royal official exercised a lot of power and had authority over people, but he himself did not have the authority and the power to fix whatever it is that was killing his son. And I don't know if you've ever been to a hospital where there is a child who's sick and a child who's dying, but parents get pretty desperate when they're in that position. They get pretty desperate when they see their son or their daughter, maybe a newborn baby who's dying of a particular illness, maybe of cancer or a particular brain tumor. The phone just went off. Anything can happen in this business when we're recording live. But you get pretty desperate. You get pretty sick, and you get pretty worried when it's a child who's in this position. You know, I think most parents would rather themselves be sick than their child be sick. And this official is in this position. Let's read the story from John chapter 4. Once more he visited Cana in Galilee, where he had turned the water into wine. And there there was a certain royal official, somebody who worked for the King Herod, whose son lay sick at Capernaum. When this man heard that Jesus had arrived in Galilee from Judea, he went to him and begged him to come and heal his son, who was close to death. So you can imagine, he's coming to Jesus, and from where he was to where Jesus was, they didn't have cars and public transport. It would have probably taken him a good day, maybe on his horse, to actually make this journey. So he comes and he begs Jesus. He begs Jesus, unless you people see signs and wonders, Jesus told him, you will never believe. So in other words, this man comes to Jesus, this royal official comes to Jesus and says, my son is dying, he is close to death. I'm begging you, can you actually come and heal him? Can you come back? Can you make the day's trip with me? I'm begging you, come and heal him. He's dying. This man, this royal official, has probably seen hundreds, maybe thousands of people have probably have come to him begging for an audience with the king. He's probably seen many, many people come and beg, fall on the ground, pleading with the king to waive taxes or to do something. This royal official is doing the very same thing that he has seen many, many people do. It's probably happened to him. He exercises authority. He exercises the ability to say to people, you can see the king, you can do this, you can do that. People have probably begged him for a break at times. And he comes and he begs Jesus, please, please, please. And Jesus basically says to this crowd of people around him, you people are all the same. You want to see me exercise power. You're not just going to take my word at face value. When I say something, you don't just believe that I have the authority to say these things. You actually need to see me back it up. And Jesus says to this man, and the royal official says to Jesus, sir, please come down before my child dies. Please come to my village, come to where I am. I need you to heal my son. I'm begging of you. And Jesus says, go, your son will live. So in other words, Jesus says, I'm not going to go with you, but I am going to heal your son. I'm not going to make the day's trip with you, but I am going to heal your son. Simply by me speaking, your son is going to be healed. And what does it say? The man took Jesus at his word and departed. The man took Jesus at his word and departed. As teenagers, we're probably very good, because I was good at this. We always questioned people. When people in authority figures, whether they were our parents, whether they were our teachers, when they told us to do something, we were always very good at saying, why? Why should I do this? Or we were very good at trying to challenge their authority. If they'd said to us, well, you can't go out at night, they would be like, you're so unfair, that's not fair. But this man here took Jesus at his word. He understood that simply because Jesus had all power over heaven and earth, he had the ability simply by speaking to actually heal his son even from a great distance. You think about this. If your child was dying and you went up to a doctor and you said, please doctor, my son is dying. Can you come and heal my son? You would expect the doctor to actually come with you, wouldn't you? Like imagine, for instance, that your child was choking. Say your child was choking in one room of your house and a doctor was downstairs in the house. And you ran to the doctor and you said, doctor, come run upstairs with me so that you can perform the Heimlich maneuver and stop my son or daughter from choking, right? It would be pretty strange if that doctor just said, oh no, they're healed, don't worry about it. You'd be like, no, you got to come. You got to perform the maneuver on them. You got to heal them. You got to be physically in the room. But this man didn't do that. He knew that even if Jesus wasn't in the same place as his son, Jesus, simply by his word, simply by the authority and the power he exercised, had the power to heal his son. And let's pick up the story. So it says, then the man took Jesus at his word and departed. While he was still on his way, his servant met him with the news that the boy was living. When he inquired as to the time when his son got better, they said to him, yesterday at 1 p.m, the fever left him. So he was dying of a fever. The father realized that this was the exact time at which Jesus said to him, your son will live. And at this, his whole household believed. So Jesus does a very powerful miracle. And in response to that, the son is actually healed, and the father and his whole household believes. And they put their trust in Jesus. Jesus in his lifetime showed that he had authority over many, many things. He showed that he had authority over nature. When we read in John's Gospel that he actually walked on water, he had authority over nature. Jesus showed that he had authority over nature when he changed water into wine. He actually changed the molecules of water and turned them into wine, a process that takes many, 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 many years. Jesus sped up and did it instantly. That is some bizarre chemistry. Imagine learning that in your science class, the ability to turn water into wine. Jesus showed that he had authority in that situation. Jesus showed at different times that he had authority over physical disabilities that people had. So the human body, he had authority over those, power to heal the human body. Just like in the story we read where he healed the royal official's son of a fever, he had authority. We would read later, if you read later in John, and we're going to pick this up in a couple of weeks, Jesus had authority over a man who was born blind. He had the authority and the power to fix that man's eyesight and that man's vision, and he didn't have laser technology to do it. Jesus had authority over a man who was paralyzed for 38 years. If you read later on in John, there's a man who is paralyzed, and Jesus has authority and the power to heal that man. As I said before, you can't have authority without power, and you can't have power without authority. Jesus exercises both. Jesus also shows later on in John's Gospel that he has power and authority to raise the dead. He raises a man called Lazarus from the dead. He also raises himself from the dead when he dies. We'll get to all of that stuff later. And Jesus said, the reason my Father loves me is that I lay down my life only to take it up again. He says, no one takes my life from me, but I lay it down on my own accord. I have the authority to lay it down and I have the authority to take it up. Jesus showed that he had the authority to raise people from the dead. He did it of his own accord. Nobody came to Jesus one day and said, Jesus, I'm going to give you power to do this. He had the authority because he is God. Jesus had authority to forgive sins. We don't look at this explicitly in John's Gospel, but if you were to read the Gospel of Mark, there's a story of Jesus who heals a man who's paralyzed, and in the process, Jesus forgives that man's sins. Jesus has the authority to forgive sins. When we come together as a youth group and we say to you that if you put your trust in Jesus, your sins are forgiven. Everything that you've ever done wrong, Jesus has forgiven your sins. He has the authority to do that. The question I guess you might be asking is, okay, if Jesus has all this authority and all this power, how is it possible that any person can actually do all of these wonderful things? How can somebody heal somebody who's born blind? How can Jesus heal a royal official's son who has a fever simply by just speaking it and not being in the room with him? He didn't give him Panadol, he just spoke it, and this royal official's son, the fever leaves him. You might be wondering, how is it possible? I don't see other people just going around doing these things. Well, I want to say that the reason why Jesus has the power is because Jesus is the one who created everything. Jesus created the world. Jesus created you and I. He created humans. Think about this. A person, an IT software developer, has the ability to write different software, right? The creator and Apple, when they make an iPad, or they make the iPhone, or Google when they release a new piece of software or anything like that, they have the power to actually go in and rewrite software if they want. If Apple tomorrow want to make an iPhone that's this big or this small, they have the power and the authority to do it because they're the ones who developed it. They're the ones who created the software. Jesus has the power to do all of these things because he is the one who made the software that is the human body, who made the software that is the world and the universe around us. When you ask the question, how is it that Jesus had the ability to walk on water? It's because he is the one who created water in the first place. How is it that Jesus healed the human eye? It's because he was the one who created the human eye to begin with. Jesus has this power and this authority because he is the creator of everybody. The second question you might be asking is, okay, Jason, I get the fact that Jesus has authority and power to do all of these things, but why doesn't he do all of these things all the time? Right? There are plenty of people who are sick, like the official son. There are plenty of people who have cancer. There are plenty of people who have coronavirus. There are plenty of people in hospital who are sick and dying. Why doesn't he heal all of those people? And the answer is very simple. It's that when Jesus went around doing these things, it was because he wanted to give people signs. He wanted to give people signals that he had the power to do all of these things. He didn't go around healing everybody because he wanted to show people that he had the power to heal everybody, and one day he was going to fix everything. One day he was going to put everything right. One day he was going to heal every person of cancer. One day he was going to heal every person who was blind, every person who was paralyzed, every person who was sick and dying of coronavirus. But that time is not yet now. That time is going to come later on in life. Later on when Jesus actually returns and we see Jesus face to face and we celebrate for all eternity in heaven with God. That is the time when Jesus is going to put everything right. And Jesus just wanted to give us a taste of what is to come. The final question you might have is this. Okay, you say to me, okay, Jason, I get the fact that Jesus has all authority and all power, but in life, when I look around at people, I see a lot of people abuse their power. I see a lot of people abuse the authority that they have. You know, there are a lot of people out there who exercise power and authority, and they're very forceful about the way they do it. They're very mean about the way they do it. Maybe you have a parent who has power and authority over your life, but maybe they're exercising that power and authority in a way that's not so right. Maybe they're telling you what you have to do with your life. Maybe they're saying to you, I want you to grow up and become this. You might be wondering, well, Jason, I see people exercise power and authority in that way, and I don't want a bar of a God or Jesus if he's going to exercise his power and authority in that way. Can I just say to you that Jesus is very different to any other person you've ever met. He has all the power and all authority, yes, but he doesn't abuse his power and he doesn't abuse his authority. When you read the Gospels, you notice that Jesus is very compassionate with people. He's very loving with people. He cares deeply for people. He doesn't force his will on anybody. He doesn't force anybody to bow the knee to him. He doesn't say, you worship me or I'm going to kill you. He exercises his power with grace and humility. Jesus is all-powerful. He's all-knowing. He knows everything about us. He knows when we're going to take a wrong action. He knows when we're going to take a right action. He is morally perfect in every way. And that is the type of person we should willingly want to surrender authority to. If somebody exercised power and authority over your life and they did everything for your best interest, and they did everything out of full love and full devotion to you and wanting the best for you, you and I would want that person to exercise authority over our lives, wouldn't we? It's like a parent who lovingly exercises authority over their newborn baby. They exercise that authority out of love, and the baby fully submits and fully gives their life over to that parent. The same is true of Jesus. The same is true of God. That's actually why we call God Father. It's because he is a parent to us. He looks after us. He cares for us in every single way. And I want to say that there came a time over 10 years ago when I lost one of the key authority figures in my life. I lost my dad. He passed away. He passed away of liver failure, and I was very young when this happened. And I remember that night going to bed and reading through the Gospel of John. I was reading, and as chance would have it, I came in contact with the passage where Jesus, and we'll get to this later on, where Jesus says, in my Father's house there are many rooms. If it was not so, I would have told you. I'm going there to prepare a place for you. And I'm reading this statement Jesus makes, in my Father's house are many rooms. I go to prepare a place for you. And I just remember sitting back and thinking, there's something really, really unique about the way this man is speaking. There's something really, really unique about the way he's speaking. You and I have seen plenty of people post things on social media and you just ignore it. You're like, oh, that person's, what they're saying is rubbish. It doesn't make any sense. But this wasn't like one of those times. I'm reading what Jesus is saying, and I've just lost one of the key authority figures in my life, and I'm reading what this guy Jesus is saying, and I'm sitting back thinking, this guy has authority. This guy isn't just speaking off the top of his head. He's not just making this stuff up as he goes along. This guy has authority. There's something about the way he speaks. He has authority. Listen to what he says. In my Father's house are many rooms. And then he goes on to say, if I didn't say this to you, if it wasn't true, I wouldn't tell you it. He's coming out and he's saying, I have authority to say this. And he's saying to me now that I'm going to prepare a place for you. And I remember just thinking, wow, here I am losing, I've just lost my dad. But yet here, this man, Jesus, is saying to me that it's okay. It's okay. Because I'm taking care of your dad. I prepared a place for him, so he's okay. But I just want you to know that even though you lost your main authority figure in your life, God is your father. God is your dad. He's your father. He's the one who's going to take care of you. He's going to look after you. He's got a place for you. If anything, if you were to die tomorrow, he's got your back. He's going to look after you. And I just remember thinking that Jesus is staking his own authority and his own claim over my life at this point. And I want to share the same with you. That we can read all of these incredible things that Jesus does, all of the ways that he has great authority, all of the great power he has. But here is Jesus backing it up. Here is Jesus saying that I am the ultimate authority. God is your father. He's going to look after you. But the question you have to ask yourself is, are you going to give your life over to God, to Jesus, who is the ultimate authority figure? Are you going to say, yeah, you know what? I actually agree. You are the one who has all authority. You are the one who has all power. You're more powerful than my mum or my dad, my grandparents, my brothers, my sisters. You're more powerful than my teachers at school. You're more powerful than my principal. You're more powerful than the government. You're the one who has all authority. You have all authority on earth and in heaven. And one day, I'm going to go to be in that place that you prepared for me.
Thank you guys for sticking around for week 4. Jason, man, as usual, really good talk from him. We hope that you guys enjoyed it. You can say your thank you to him whilst we have the wind coming through right now, to him on Zoom, straight after this, link in description. It is windy, it's a tornado, we shouldn't be up here, so we're going to get down. Have a good one. Bye.